I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Today, we take a look at adversity, resilience, and a resolve to thrive with our special guest, Juli, who faced adversity from a young age. And that did not stop her, but it wasn't easy. You know, it's said when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Juli has not only thrived, but she's sharing her life lessons and inspiration to help others. It's a story of having faith in her ability to survive, building a foundation of hope and a connection, which you'll learn about, that simply changed everything. Let's meet our guest, Juli Bretz. Juli, welcome to the show, and please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Peter. Thank you for having me. This is exciting. Very exciting. So I grew up in Iowa, but I wasn't born in Iowa. I was born in Minnesota. I was 4 months old when my mom died, and forced my biological dad to make some difficult decisions. And he did, and he loved me enough to give me up for adoption because he couldn't raise me due to an alcohol addiction. So that's how I got to Iowa. And I grew up here. I'm the youngest of four siblings. My biological mom, or my adopted mom, has some pretty significant mental health issues, which presents a difficult growing up, you know. My dad divorced my mom when I was 16, and so that was difficult. I moved out and was on my own at 17. I've been married a couple times, and I have two daughters, biological, and four altogether.
Now, what are some of did you grow up in faith-based homes or not so much?
I did. We were raised in church, and we went to a private Catholic school, for sure.
So as your life evolved, that became significant, and we're going to get to that. But what was it like? I mean, that had to be really tough on virtually a child, having that much chaos around her. I mean, that's an induction into substance use disorder and maybe dysfunction at a very, very young age. What do you think were some of the things early on that kept you from going down a bad path?
That's a good question, Peter, because I did go down a bad path. Most of my adolescence was spent running away from home, trying to find out where I fit and where I belonged. I ran away from home a lot. I was in and out of treatment facilities for running away, suicide attempts, drug use. What brought me out of it was eventually, as an adult, I became a mom myself. And that just changed the way I looked at my choices.
You know, it's fascinating because having met you on a different premise, I would have had no idea, not that you hid anything, but I would have no idea that you had such a tumultuous upbringing and really had to work individually very hard to find a path, as you said, when you had children.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And what was it like, you know, making that transition and then raising kids? What was the environment like for you the first time you had kids?
I was a very young mom. And it's all I ever wanted to be when I grew up was a mom. Most kids say they want to be a teacher or an astronaut or a doctor. I would always say I wanted to be a mom. But it didn't stop my partying. I continued to drink and I continued to party. I married my first husband because I was pregnant and we were starting a family. And it only took a couple of years for me to decide at that time that that wasn't the life I wanted. I wasn't done playing yet, so to speak. And I kept my daughter, of course. She was my first priority. But I ended the marriage and continued partying.
And then what turned that phase around?
I met Jesus. I got remarried several years later. I was not saved yet. I didn't know the Lord. I had never met him in the church that I grew up in, and neither did my current husband. We just liked to party together. And then I met Jesus, and everything changed. I just could not get enough of the Bible. I couldn't get enough of spending time with God. And he made it was a slow transition. He made some really radical changes in my heart and in my life. And they were obvious enough changes where my current husband felt like we didn't have enough in common anymore. I was no longer drinking. I had very different interests, and he didn't want that lifestyle. And so he left me after 13 years.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is life for you now?
It's wonderful. It's fantastic. My oldest daughter is 30, and my youngest daughter is 19 now. It hasn't always been easy, but I've always had Jesus. One of my daughters struggled a little bit with the same issues that I struggled with growing up. And so that was difficult. Yeah, I'm remarried to a very godly man who loves me. He loves Jesus first, but he loves me second, and that's wonderful. And I have a lot of friends that are very supportive and pray for me.
Well, we're going to take a short break. We come back. I'd like to explore some of the things you did, because you were a school nurse, a sexual assault nurse examiner. So you've really tracked with helping people, and I'd like to see how that evolved in your life. We'll see y'all after the break. You don't want to miss this.
Well, because it's the best. And that's true, because I've thought about that. I mean, definitely the fastest. And the biggest thing I hear most people talk about is the stability of it.
MediaCom's network is very reliable. We have a lot of programs in place that can monitor kind of issues that arise. That way we can fix them before they reach the customer.
Trust the pros. Get Extreme Internet starting at $9.99 a month for a year.
Malware and bots and worms, oh my. The wild, wild web can be a scary and complex place. And as our digital world expands, so too are the threats. Watch out, Trojan horse. That's why at MediaCom, we take security very seriously and monitor our networks around the clock to stop threats before they can affect you. Not today, rude kid. Not all internet is created equal. We build ours to keep you connected and protected.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're talking with Juli Brutz about how her journey through adversity has led to the inspiration to help others survive and thrive in the face of adversity through something called biblical counseling. But before you got to biblical counseling, Juli, you were helping people. Early on,
Yes.
you were with Head Start, right?
I was, yeah. Helping people has always been my heart, my passion. I worked for Des Moines Public Schools working for Head Start. It is a federally funded program for low-income families to send their kids to preschool. I loved it. I love what I did. I loved being in people's homes and hearing their stories and seeing where they came from. But I wasn't making much more money than actually the families were. And I wasn't able to really support my family on that income. God called me into nursing. A little bit against my will at first. I had no desire to go back to school. But I did. And I went to nursing school and I got my RN degree with the idea that I would go back into the school system as a nurse, making more money. And that's exactly where God put me. I like to joke and tell people that I told God I wouldn't work nights, holidays, or weekends. Everybody knows that's what nurses do. But God loved me so much. He gave me nights, holidays, weekends, and summers off. And I loved it. So I was doing that. And with summers off, I felt like I had some time on my hands now that my kids were older. I took training to be what's called a sexual assault nurse examiner. That also is very close to my heart. I myself was a sexual assault victim as a teenager. And it's a very personal passion of mine to be able to give victims a voice and let them know that they're believed and they're seen and they're heard. And so I've been doing nurse examinations for about 2 years. I recently became an employee of Polk County Health by being a crisis and victim advocate. And so now I'm helping sexual assault victims in both the advocacy role and the nurse examiner role, which it's a strangely rewarding to be able to help victims get some power back. And then that led me into biblical counseling. I just want to continue helping people.
They say that doctors treat their own selves and families the worst. They treat everybody else better. But you have this unique combination of healing yourself and working with healing other people at the same time.
Well, thank you, Peter.
Well, it's fascinating because, my first discussions with you about what you were encountering as a school nurse, as a mom, and I think I told you at the time, your problem solving skills are right on, but reality is reality. There's nothing that can go back and change all the conditions. You can only exercise patience and understanding. And I can't say that I was shocked when you went into biblical counseling, but I can say that you know how to keep your head on straight. I mean, it's not like, okay, I'm going to say something that's wrong, and I'm a Catholic kid, I shouldn't say it, but it's not like you became a Jesus freak. You were a person,
Right.
You had a career, you had a family, and you don't push anything on people. To me, you were a mystery. I didn't know all this stuff. And so when you told me you were doing this, I thought, I can see this happening, because I talk to religious leaders, and they're always worried about, we're losing faith in America. America is a faith-based culture, and less people are going to church and thinking about faith, and more people are suffering from mental health. And the populations that are least engaged in faith are having the biggest problems with mental health. And I've heard that ideas, when I asked a couple of people in the clergy about biblical counseling, they said, oh yeah, that's a great thing, because it's bringing a lot of people back to the church. So tell us a little bit about maybe the history of biblical counseling, how it works, and don't tell me it's as old as the Bible, because it might be. But but I mean, in terms of contemporary culture, how do you saw it, and you saw the transition, and how you think this can really be important to help people?
Yeah, biblical counseling has been around as long as the Bible. The transition really happened when I was doing the advocacy part. I realized that wasn't an avenue that I could ever talk about Jesus. It was in a public health setting, and I wanted an avenue where I could share the love and the grace of Jesus with people. There is so much sorrow and sickness in our world everywhere. Believers, Christ followers, and unbelievers alike, we're all suffering, and none of us were created to do it alone. And a lot of times the people that need it the most can't afford it, or don't have insurance, or they don't want to end up with a diagnosis on their medical record. And with biblical counseling, it's always going to be free. What I received from the Lord and the Holy Spirit was free. And so I'm always going to give it away for free. There are ways that people can, if they want to, support a ministry, that I work with, but the counseling itself will always be free. I don't work with insurances, so there's never the fear of, I don't know, a pastor's wife who is just going through a rough season and needs a confident person to talk to that doesn't want to end up with anxiety and depression on their medical record. They can come to me and they won't have to worry about, their secrets getting out or diagnoses.
Well, I find this fascinating. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to continue the conversation with Juli and learn some fascinating things about biblical counseling. See you all after the break. You don't want to miss this.
Dad, I'm not glitching.
I told you with our new Extreme Internet, it will be smooth streaming.
That's unbelievable.
Well, you better believe it, Missy.
I already finished streaming the whole second season of my show.
So start the third.
What the fast? That's really not frustrating.
I'll take that as a compliment.
You should.
I'm gonna get some ice cream. Do you want some?
With the drama-free reliability of Extreme Internet, you'll have to create your own. Get super fast internet with whole home Wi-Fi for as low as $24.99 a month for a year.
You told me not to talk to strangers. You told me not to cross the street without looking both ways.
You told me not to touch the stove. You told me not to do drugs. You told me not to drink and drive.
You gave me so many messages about how to stay safe. Why didn't you keep me safe by properly storing your gun?
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. I'm your host, Peter Komendowski. And we're talking with Juli. And sort of interesting twist here is that faith and the Bible have been cornerstones of American culture. And some say that biblical values have eroded. But Juli is an example of how faith and the Bible are making a resurgence in Iowa and America. And it's fascinating that this idea of biblical counseling, which doesn't cost any money, can connect people to a support system that apparently, by what we see from Juli in her life, works. So tell us more about how people connect with it, how they find out who you are, and how this thing works.
Yeah. So a little bit on the connection with me and the difference between regular counseling and biblical counseling is when I was going through my difficult phases of adolescence, I was in and out of treatments. I was seeing counselors right and left, and they all seemed to want to tell me what was wrong. I can't tell you how many times I heard the words, "It's okay to be mad at your mom for dying." And I wasn't. That wasn't my story, but they all wanted it to be. And so with biblical counseling, it has more of a holistic approach, a listening, a grace, which is always based in the Bible, of course, which is sufficient for everything we face in this world: sickness, sorrow, heartbreak, hurts, habits, everything. But the difference is you don't have to be a believer to benefit from biblical counseling. I am able to, because I love Jesus and I have his spirit inside me. I'm able to give that grace and that love unconditionally to anybody because it was given to me. So you don't have to be a believer to benefit from biblical counseling.
So how do non-believer, I mean, if I was a non-believer, I would see biblical counseling and go, the other way. How do people connect with you, and what some of the experience has been like?
It's very relational, very relationship. I think it's important that when you are doing any type of mental health or discipling, witnessing, anything like that, it has to be based on a mutual relationship. So you have to build that trust.
And do you run into people that have had, challenges in their life like you have? And does that give you an extra competency to sort of empathize with them?
Yes, I think it sure does. When you meet with a victim that knows that you have also been a result of a sexual assault, or when you meet with somebody that has also lost a parent, that gives you almost, street credit with them, that this is somebody that gets it. And when they know that you really want to hear their story and you make them feel seen and heard, that's what builds that bond and that trust.
So
Absolutely.
if I understand this correctly, if I was a quote unquote non-believer or atheist, whatever a large segment of American people that are having problems, just like everybody else, problems don't look at your faith or non-faith to determine if they're going to get you. And I talk to you, you wouldn't be trying to convert me. You wouldn't be making the choices you made obligatory for me. You would just providing wise counsel based on a fairly reputable book, one that's been on the bestseller list for longer than anything, and about a guy named Jesus that's really made a more for a career of himself than Elvis or the Beatles or anybody else, been around for 2,000 years on the greatest hits lists. So, but that doesn't matter because there's the wisdom there sort of transcends that, huh?
It absolutely does. It goes back to the stories of Jesus when he ate with people that weren't of religious background. He ate with some of what they call the lowest of the low, and that didn't matter to Jesus. He spent his time with them. He didn't double check on what their denomination was first or how long they have been saved. He just loved people, and that's all I want to do through this ministry. Is I just want to love people. I want to be that warm glow that people invite into their dark spaces and just shed some light on it.
So if I was having trouble and I was short of money, why wouldn't I call you?
And that's a good question.
Well, it's interesting because that seems a little different. We've heard of AA get, hidden in the basements of churches, and then people think it's also a form of conversion to faith. And you're pretty out in the open about this, and it doesn't sound like you're hiding in the basements of churches, other than it might be a room that you use. So people shouldn't feel any stigma about it at all.
No. I think everybody needs someone to talk to once in a while. Everybody goes through hard times. Everybody's got a story. And if we hide those stories away, it builds up and it comes out in symptoms like anger and bitterness, maybe resentment, addictions, those kind of things. We just need people to connect with us and to be able to listen to our stories and help us process the pain.
And besides your nursing, and we'll talk about this when we come back, I think, besides your nursing and your sexual assault training, you've also been trained as a big biblical counselor. This is not something you made up. This is a formal training program.
Yes.
In the few seconds we have left now, what was that like? How did you find that?
I was trained in Lincoln, Nebraska, at a place called the Counseling Hub, Biblical Counseling Hub. And we just really went through what it looks like to walk through all type of life events with the lens of the Bible. And we really worked hard at focusing on the grace of God.
That's really fascinating. Well, we've got more time with you and we're going to take a short break. We come back, I'm going to ask you to share some final comments, insights, and inspiration for our guests. See you all after the break. You don't want to miss this.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Oh boy.
Our back and forth. It always came back.
Dad!
You probably don't remember what you told me,
That was perfect.
but I heard every word.
Watching MC22 is now easier than ever before. All MediaCom customers can watch local programming online anytime. Go to mc22.net, click Watch MC22, and log in with your MediaCom account. Not a MediaCom cable subscriber? MediaCom internet or phone subscribers can watch too. Your local programming leader, MC22, online at mc22.net/watch.
Dad! Dad, I'm not glitching!
I told you with our new Extreme Internet, it will be smooth streaming.
That's unbelievable!
Well, you better believe it, Missy.
I already finished streaming the whole second season of my show.
So start the third.
What the fast? That's really not frustrating.
I'll take that as a compliment.
You should.
I'm gonna get some ice cream. Do you want some?
With the drama-free reliability of Extreme Internet, you'll have to create your own. Get super fast internet with whole home Wi-Fi for as low as $24.99 a month for a year.
Welcome back. Today on Surviving Bad, we explore the idea of biblical counseling and how it has the potential to help people navigate life's challenges. Let's see what final insights and inspiration Julie has to share. But Julie, let me start with a question. So what if somebody from another faith or another church wants to get in touch with you? I mean, because you say you don't push the faith part, you just use the Bible part. How did these relationships work you build with clients?
That's a great question. The Bible is not denomination specific. I myself go to a non-denomination church, and as long as Jesus is the core, that's my heart. And so whether you attend a Catholic church, a Pentecostal church, Baptist, it doesn't matter. What I want you to know is that you can reach out, and I'm a safe place. Everything we talk about will always be confidential. I am a trained counselor, and part of that is the confidentiality, and I'm not going to push any denomination values on any person.
So having said that, so we presume there'd be less stigma if people know that. What special things can you do to attract people from the secular world?
Word of mouth, referral. I think that a lot of my background that I used to live in that world gives me a little bit of an insight or an edge to that secular world, and I'm not judgmental.
Yeah, faith is an interesting sort of, it's like a weather pattern. It can go through your life. You know, at some point you grow up young and it inspires you in some ways. And then I think we all get to a point in life where we reject it or challenge it.
Yes. Walk away. Yep.
And many, we basically see half the people in this country rejecting faith. And it's important to reconnect our communities.
Yes.
But when I speak to church leaders, I often say we don't combine programs with other churches or encourage, because they don't want to lose people to a different church or denomination. So you got two things going on at once.
Mm.
They're having trouble attracting people. And then if you try to say, get a Lutheran and a Catholic church to work together on something in a town, it's very, very hard.
It is. Yes.
They don't want to be oppositional, but they don't really want to work together. They just assume work separately together. Then,
no.
So now you're really sort of preaching a different angle on life, that we need to drop all of these things. We need to say, hey, there's a lot of counseling in this world. Maybe instead of just looking at one kind or struggling with paying bills, maybe I should look at biblical counseling.
Yes, absolutely. We can approach it through the Bible. And I don't think when we show up at heaven, Jesus asked us what our denomination was. That's not a question we're going to be asked. And it's not a question I'm asking.
So if let's take Jesus and faith out of the picture, but it, and all of a sudden you go back to Juli in her wild days, and you can talk to her, pretty much knowing that if you try to talk to her about what you're doing now, she's not going to listen to you.
Right.
What would you tell her?
I have a technique called motivational interviewing that is not faith-based. And I would just talk to wild Juli about, what do you want to be? What do you see yourself in 5 years? What are some steps that you can get to that? What are you struggling with right now? And if life continues the way it is, where will you be in 5 years? If it changes, where will you be in 5 years? That's an approach that I would take.
Can parents call you to talk about issues with their children?
Absolutely. Yes. I have a lot of experience in parenting. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this insight on something that was very new to me. And I hope if it's new to people, maybe it'll help them.
Yeah. I think my email address is going to be on there, and you can just reach me through there and give me your information, and I'll give them a call.
All right. Fantastic. And thank you all for watching today. Check out our website at healthyiowa.org and keep your eye on MediaCom MC22 for our next episode of Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. On MediaCom MC22, your local programming leader.